helpful.
This conference will now be recorded.
There we go.
Sorry,
No, that's
forgot.
okay. It would be helpful for me, since I don't think I've met any of you at this point yet, to just, if we could have everybody on the call just introduce themselves and say what group they're representing. I know we have a few boards and commissions represented here tonight, so that would be great if you guys wouldn't all mind doing that.
Sure.
Chair of the Arts Commission.
Steve Law, Vice Chairman of the Architectural Review Board.
Jamie Millward, Chairman of the Architecture Review Board.
Ryan Ehrenhaus, Chair of the Historic District Commission.
Megan Booth, Historic District Commission.
Hey, did we get everybody?
No, Lou, do you want to introduce yourself? Which commission you represent? Can't hear
Sorry.
you.
Arts Commission.
Great. All
And
right,
then
well,
I think
Susan,
we also have Megan Mervin with us. Is Megan with HDC?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Megan. I'm Susmita. I'm the town planner.
great. So
Yeah.
yes, Susmita, if you want to hand over control so I can share my presentation, that would be great, and we'll get started.
Sure. Yes. And just for the record, this morning I received some materials from Tom Zarkowicz with ARB. He had some ideas for placemaking design standards for Paradise Green neighborhood. And I don't know if Rory, you had a chance to review them, but you might want to show in the end if you can. Mm-hmm.
I did, yeah, and I have them. I can pull them up. They were helpful, definitely helpful to see. So yeah, with that, so tonight our meeting, you know, the topic as you guys showed me with your introductions, so there's a few different boards and commissions represented here. So, you know, the topic tonight is really community character and cultural and historic resources that we'll be discussing with you all this evening. And let's see here. Okay, so for our agenda tonight, you know, we want to just provide you an overview about the Plan of Conservation Development, the POCD. You know, we'll talk about what we've done and where we're going with it. Then we'll review some, you know, data and findings related to this topic. You know, we'll talk about what we've heard from our community engagement. We'll look back at some of the goals from the current plan, and then you know, really the point of this tonight is to have a discussion with you folks. You guys are the experts on this topic here in Stratford, so we really want to take the time to, you know, hear what you have to say. So about the Plan of Conservation and Development, the current plan was completed in 2013, and you know, the POCDs really are meant as a holistic document that the Planning Commission uses, and they lay out a guideline and a vision, you know, how Stratford should grow and evolve, you know, over the course of 10 years and into the future. So state statutes require that POCDs be updated every 10 years. So here in Stratford, you guys are due. So that's, you know, what we're doing here now. The POCD is guided by what we call the Technical Advisory Committee. We meet about once a month. It's made up of different department staff. Also, the Planning Commission is involved. And, you know, we're trying to provide as many opportunities to get involved as possible. We've done 3 workshops. We met with seniors at the Baldwin Center. We launched a Plan Stratford website with an online survey and interactive map. We've done pop-ups at community events over the fall and over the summer and fall. We have an online survey that's still live. It'll probably go until the end of the year, and we're trying to get as much feedback from the community as possible. We're conducting interviews like this with you folks tonight. We'll be doing 10 of those, and then an additional 6 stakeholder interviews. And we also went to the Stratford High School. So you can see we're really trying to get out there and get as much feedback as possible. So, you know, just looking at some of our early findings, I did review the current POCD, and in that document, you know, it kind of laid out what were called different character areas, and they described, you know, what types of development, what types of buildings you would find in these different areas, you know, places like Academy Hill, post-war residential areas, strip commercial, town center, waterfront commercial. And also to note is, since that plan is the TOD zone, which is in the downtown. And I included this map here, which shows the outline in purple of where the historic district is. And you can see it sort of overlaps the TOD zone slightly. And that's that Academy Hill historic district that you have right in the downtown. So, we know there's quite a few cultural destinations here in Stratford, places like the National Helicopter Museum, the Center for the Arts, Booth Memorial Park. We held one of our workshops there. The Baldwin Center, the Hindu Cultural Center, just to name a few. So I mentioned that we have the different workshops, and what we've been hearing at these is here in town, there's really a desire for more beautification projects. The plantings along Main Street in the summer were mentioned, and people said, do more of that here in Stratford. And then a general thought and consensus is, the new development has to really look good and comply with standards. And I did, looking back at the current plan, I think there was a mentioned commercial design guidelines. So I don't know if that's something we can talk about this in the discussion, if that's something that we do have. And as Susmita mentioned, Tom sent over some guidelines for Paradise Green, which are great and very similar to what these are. We did hear that Stratford is lacking a real downtown environment, and the kind of the feeling that the commercial's really broken up across town. One of the questions we asked at the workshop was, what nearby town or what town in New England could serve as a good role model for positive growth. In many of those towns, it was places like Milford, West Hartford, Fairfield, and people said, they liked the downtown feeling, the real kind of village center. We also heard there's a desire for adaptive reuse and renovation of the town's older buildings. There's a lot of historic homes, industrial properties. So, finding uses for those and preserving their character is also desired. The visioning was done for the Shakespeare property, and people at the workshop said, what's next? We want to hear what's going on with that. How does that keep moving forward? And similar, the Center School property came up quite a bit. Folks were asking about that as well. And a feeling that, the town has these great museums. It would be great if somehow in the school curriculum, and maybe they're already doing this to some extent, but if Stratford's youth could get to those museums, whether it be field trips or other trips to those resources. So again, like I said, we did take a look at the current plan, the goals from that plan. And so for community character, and this was its own chapter in the plan, it was to develop mechanisms to preserve, enhance, and celebrate Stratford's unique neighborhoods and commercial centers as elements of the cohesive whole. And there were some objectives laid out for this goal. And these were, develop a unifying and celebratory theme, communicating Stratford's high quality of life and economic opportunities. Connect each of Stratford's neighborhoods and character areas into the whole. Adapt standards for streetscapes and public realm elements to reinforce Stratford's identity. And then identify opportunities for redevelopment and revitalization of character areas. Then we took a look at the goals for historic and cultural resources, and similar, it was to preserve, enhance, and celebrate the town's historic and cultural resources, provide safe and efficient transportation options, and promote healthy lifestyles. So the objectives for this goal were to promote historic and cultural resources as tourism destinations, to educate residents and visitors about Stratford's importance as a historic community, and then to expand the town's inventory of historic districts, buildings, structures, and landscapes in order to place them on local, state, and federal registers of historic places. Then there were some action steps, and I won't read through all of these just because there's quite a few, but there was a few I wanted to highlight. One of them, investigate the potential for establishing a Shakespeare Center on the property, facilitate partnerships with Connecticut Air and Space Center, Sikorsky Airport, to establish a permanent home for major museum centers along Main Street and the airport, become a certified local government to access grant funding and technical assistance for historic preservation. And then there was one to designate districts under Connecticut's village district legislation to protect historic neighborhoods through zoning regulations. And I know this is something that Susmita had asked me to discuss with you folks tonight, if there's still a desire to try and do that. And then so when we talk about the village district, the village district, the purpose of this is to preserve distinct community character, landscapes, and structures in a community. And towns can identify these village districts where like local zoning commissions can adopt regulations for the design and placement of buildings, maintenance, materials, landscaping, and ensuring that new construction is in harmony with the architectural fabric. This is something that many of the attendees at our workshop said is, it has to kind of be context sensitive to the area. And then there's applications for substantial reconstruction, new construction are subject to the review process for these. And some examples, Middletown has village districts, Old Lyme, Farmington, Madison are all communities that have adopted these village districts. So with that, I really want to open it up for a discussion with you all, getting your thoughts on some of your issues, some of the things you deal with in your group. So this first one, what are the strengths relative to community character and cultural and historic resources? What do you think the town does well? And anybody can start off. Like I said, we want to have an open discussion with you all. So. Anybody, any thought? What do you guys think?
Steve Law, Vice Chairman. I think, the town has been a beautiful place to raise kids. I think, its ability to retain residents into their senior years, I think is very important. It has a lot to offer. I think we can improve on some of the issues that we need to do to develop and really make a better place for, as you say, I think the village center is something that we want to focus on.
I can give some direction to the conversation. The current plan has a guidance for creating a cultural campus in the town center. And if you look at where we are with implementation in the town center, you can see Sterling House, Stratford Library, Baldwin Center, Ferry House, all of these right next to each other and interconnected. And that whole area in the back, near the back of the library and the senior center, where people can sit down and enjoy a book. I feel like it's really very distinct, and it adds some value to the town center.
I would agree with you, Susmita. When I was there was some seniors from Baldwin Center playing bocce, and there was kids out reading. It seemed like a nice place right in the town. Great.
So if folks in this conversation do not think there are any strengths, maybe they can tell us what the weaknesses are, at least.
You'll have to excuse the background noise. It's my son's 16th birthday, but I won't complain. But what I will say is, being a parent in town, I like how they use Judson House and Perry House to reinforce the town history. And I think that those being all volunteer run, they're amazing assets and resources for our community, especially because they hit the kids at 3rd and 5th grade. I know that it skipped during the pandemic, but I think it's great for our town's children to grow up having pride in the history of their town, because it's so relevant and important to their civics lessons.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on what Megan said, that Judson and Perry do have the 3rd and the 5th grade common. It's currently happening right now. My neighbors are coming home and their kids are telling me about the field trips that they're taking and the stuff that they really enjoy doing. But I actually wanted to maybe disagree with Steve a little bit about retention of residents, only because of the families that we know who have children. I have a daughter who just started kindergarten, half of the families that we know have moved their children out of Stratford specifically due to the school systems. And I think some of it is reputation and some of it is reality. But I think that the fact that we think that we're retaining people, we're not retaining everyone. And I think we're actually losing a lot of retention of younger families purely based on school systems. And I'd actually like to add to what Roy mentioned about doing street projects and streetscaping. I think that that's actually a weakness where the town falls in terms of like green planning. If you want to come up with a better term, that's fine. But like we have this wonderful space behind Perry all the way over to the library, but it's literally bordered the whole way with I-95 and kind of junk planting. So we have this space, but I don't always think that we are the best stewards of the space to create positive gathering spaces, especially as it relates to green space. And I know that people have talked about like Shakespeare and Center School, but I think that those are, you know, opportunities that within the historic district, certainly we see kind of being missed and kind of just being victim to politics and funding, which is really a shame.
I'd like to weigh in on one.
What I think is interesting about Stratford and some of the challenges that we face is that unlike Milford, Fairfield, some of the other towns that you mentioned, we're not a walkable village or town. You have to drive from a shopping center to another parking lot somewhere else. You can't be at Sterling House and then easily walk somewhere else in Stratford to go shopping. And I think that's where I think we differ a lot from some of the other towns in terms of thinking, how do we create a more walkable village center or town center that has all of the different assets in one place versus being able to cite 20 different wonderful venues and places to go, but that are all disconnected from each other.
We've heard that quite a bit.
Yeah, I think I'd like to chime in on, you know, and this is Jamie from ARB, and you know, creation of green spaces and outdoor spaces, I think are you know, myself and our commission, I think are obviously all in favor of those. But I tell you, so I am my whole life lived in this town, and you know, I have 3 kids who went through the school systems and have been successful, and they're out of the house now and they're successful. But when I drive around town, it's so easy to like not really open your eyes when you're driving around your own town. But I try to do that once in a while. And what I find disheartening is I don't think that the town puts enough emphasis of taking care of the places that we do have. You know, you drive by some of the schools and some of the fields, and they're in, you know, baseball diamonds with just grass growing all over them. And, you know, and that's not just, you know, and I see that all over town. And I think that part of coming up with great ideas to increase the number of those kind of green spaces and those gathering spaces that we talk about, you know, also needs to be a plan at, you know, at the town level of better ways that we can take care of the place that we have. And that goes right to, you know, even in and around town hall, you would think, you know, I've been driven by there plenty of times where you got the new Stratford High School, you got town hall there, and I tell you,
plantings at the high school are a disgrace. I'm a horticulturist, and nothing makes me angrier than seeing architectural plans with plantings with zero maintenance plan and zero maintenance funding planned. And that's exactly what's happened. And that's what I see at all the elementary schools. Every single kid drives by their school in the summer and thinks, that's the place that I'm going to go. But right now it looks like an abandoned building because they don't even mow the lawn or prune the bushes. It's disgraceful. And if there's any kind of a garden, which the schools love to have, it relies 100% on parent participation, which only lasts for maybe 6 years if you're lucky. And then the parents move on, and the school boards are trying to find parents who are landscapers that want to donate their time because there's no budget for basic maintenance.
Yeah.
Like, let alone high-end turf or anything else.
I agree with that. And I think that, you know, when people look, we had through COVID, there was a huge influx of new people moving into town. I've heard all kinds of rumors and numbers about how, you know, what that number is, but I've heard upwards of, 20% of the people who live in Stratford have moved in the past, 2.5 years, which I'm not sure if that's right or not, but I do know that it is a large number. And I just, of course, people who move in, if they have school age kids, are going to be looking at the quality of the education and where those kids who make it through the whole system and where they end up going for higher education and everything. But I think a lot of them, when you drive through the town, and I'm kind of reiterating, but when you drive through the town, it just isn't all that appealing. There's so many areas that are just unkempt or kind of run down, and I wish there was a magic wand.
Yeah, a lot of not mowing, and not even a lot of like, we're not mowing this because it's a pollinator strip and we're working on eco building. It's just, this is full of invasive plants and trash. I see a lot of that too. I totally agree with James.
Okay, I'm gonna skip, or I guess we can come back to, I guess we kind of talked about some issues. Maybe we'll continue with that question, then we'll go back to what progress has been. We'll transition to a good note after we hear, any other issues, the maintenance you talked about, the mowing, the kind of the aesthetics overall. Any other issues that should be addressed as part of the plan?
I think there is the perception, at least from the historic district and many of the residents of the historic district, of there being a real disconnect between what people want, especially as it regards center school, and what the town's interested in installing. I think a lot of us in the historic district have kind of come to the realization that we got this grant to do a TOD study and be part of a TOD, but a lot of the historic district is at the very outer rings of the TOD, and it doesn't really work. But we're using the TOD to sort of skirt some zoning regulations that should probably still be in place. Parking is a big one. Like crosswalks, street striping, all this stuff that is supposed to be part of the TOD that we've been waiting for and never happens. Center school, people keep saying we want a place to gather, we want a green space, we want a park, and the town we want mixed use space, and we really have been having condos pushed on us, and I think a lot of people feel really jaded about it and really upset about it. That within the historic district is sort of like our biggest thing, that and massive amount of like high density housing that's hemming in the historic district that people are really upset about because it's devaluing the homes that are already there. And especially since since it's part of a TOD now, there is higher density, less parking, sort of lighter zoning overseeing, that people who live here and who moved here because they were in a historic district feel really upset about.
Yeah, I think if you go back to that map that you showed of the TOD and the historic district, it's like the historic district has been encircled by the TOD basically. Like it goes almost completely around it, and there are a lot of residents that just look at that and say, wait, like why? It's one thing if we were on the edge of it, but to have it on all sides just makes it even harder for residents to wrap their head around what's happening to our neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think what this map doesn't necessarily show is kind of all of the proposed stuff that's happening on Ferry, multiple condo buildings that really are encircling the historic district at sort of the southeastern side. It doesn't look like where that part is kind of surrounded, but it feels very much surrounded by development, and it sucks.
I feel that there's been such a big push in the last few years to add residents to town to increase amount of people paying taxes. So I guess it could lower all our taxes altogether. But I think we really need to be pushing into recognizing that we need more businesses in town to bring in corporate taxes, because we're losing ground in that regard, and it's basically up to the residents to cover the cost of this town.
Jeff is totally right. If you look at this town, and I've said this so many times, fine, you need to buy a pair of some business casual clothes. Your options are Rainbow, Walmart, TJ Maxx, or you could drive over technically the town line to Target. There's no place in town to really sort of do all of the shopping that you need to do. You end up going to Fairfield or to Westport or to Amazon for clothes, shoes. You know, with DOD walking to it, you know, there's no place where residents' money is being retained
Exactly.
in many sort of towns, and that's a huge deal.
I think also as far as corporate income, as well as, you know, attracting larger businesses or other kinds of businesses. We have a couple, you know, historically it was Avco and Sikorsky basically built this town, and then Avco disappeared and we've been suffering ever since, right? And I'm not saying we need another Avco, but we need to figure out ways to attract other smarter businesses that are gonna, you know, have larger corporate income and larger corporate taxes, which will help ease our burden, as does Milford, as does Shelton. You know.
But you're going to attract those. I mean, you know, Stratford doesn't have the space that Shelton does to attract those kind of tenants, and you're going to attract those people by improving the quality of the education, of the look of the town. And I just wanted to touch before we.
I think they're all great.
The DOD is that, you know, I have been part of the center school thing, to be quite honest. And while I can understand, like, I wasn't, you know, the development that got approved by the Christ Church in the back there, to me, that's odd. But, you know, the center school site, you know, that is, to me, classic TOD. And that needs to be, in my opinion, you know, that's the kind of space, you're right next to the train station, you're adjacent to the other struggling businesses all through there. Nothing really, you know, Colonial Square Art Shop back, or, you know, that area back behind there has, you know, struggled and changed tenants, and, you know, the buildings are, you know, no one wants to put money into the buildings because there's just not enough, you know, people coming to those businesses. And so bringing people downtown, which is why I am in favor at the center school, that we need to bring people there. And I understand the, you know, the reservations of the people who live in the historic district there, but that center school site, you know, used to be a school full of, you know, lots of activity there. And you know, that particular property adjacent to the train station, you know, that cries out to bring people downtown. And that's what's going to save that whole area, you know, the old, you know, where Cebus is, and across the street, and all those tired buildings are only going to be salvaged if developers feel like it's worthwhile to put money into those. The only way they're going to do that is if you bring people down there. And I think, you know, it's kind of the chicken or the egg thing, but I think getting people who are living, you know, and I know it's higher density, but in and around that train station, that's what's going to promote that's going to promote the walkability. You know, we're tying into the complete streets, all of those things, you know, and tying that all together is what's going to salvage that part of downtown, I think.
Great. Thanks,
I
James.
wasn't necessarily disagreeing. I'm just saying that we need to focus also on bringing business rather than just focus on bringing more taxpayers.
Yeah, I think saying that you have a captive audience because people are living there, you're putting them next to a train station because you're assuming that they're commuting to someplace else. But COVID has basically sort of changed the commuting game. So many of us are able to work from home or have started businesses because we need to work around our families and our sort of our new reality, that assuming that people are going to be getting off the train when they come home from work, it's more like people want a place to live where there's already stuff there. And I think this is the chicken or the egg thing. And Jeff touched on this with attracting businesses, and I touched on it with attracting people needing to spend money within town. You know, we have, in some ways, the buildings are tired, but they're not unattractive. But, you know, when you look at them, you have struggling businesses. You have businesses that do not like bring in an audience. Like you have Masons, you have Temple of the Masons in that old theater. You have funeral homes. You have businesses that don't necessarily attract regular retail clients, that aren't corporate areas where people are coming to work every day and then you have a captive work audience there during the day, during business hours. You're talking about having people come because they need a place to sleep and leave their car, but they're leaving during the day to go to work. That's the kind of the assumption with the center school thing. But if we have a place that encourages gathering all the time, and the businesses support the gathering all the time, you have a captive audience with people that are already in town using the resources that are within the town, as opposed to someplace to lay your head that's, you know, less expensive, and it's not a lot of space because you're going to get on the train and go to work, which isn't really the reality anymore.
That reality has completely changed. I used to commute to New York City, and yeah, we don't do that anymore. So it's a lot less of a need, I think, the center school living next to the train currently. Not to say 25 years from now it might not pick up again. And I know there's a lot of push to having the railways, you know, improved all up and down the coast, which is great. So it's a combination of these
businesses things in town. I would think any of the little restaurants that are there in town, if they would be in favor of having, you know, that many people living close by, and you know, the train ridership is down, but it's also up a lot more than it was. I mean, I go by the train station parking lots in my travels up and down in a bunch of the different towns, and it's probably, I'll bet it's 75% of what it was before. It's certainly not where it was, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. But I mean, I bet you those restaurants would be real thrilled to have people living there that would frequent all those little restaurants in there. That you know, I bet you could do a whole lot better if there were more people living there.
Well, I think it's a combination of these things. Not
I
one
don't
or
mean
the
to.
other.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think we are getting into a lot of housing discussion here, which I know it ties with placemaking, but let's just step back a little bit and, you know, figure out how can we improve the aesthetics in the town. You as the bodies or commissions tasked with improving the aesthetics of the town, what do you think are the strategies that have worked for you, and what do you recommend to be included in the POCD?
Well, if you ask me, I mean, my primary interests, I guess, in being involved here and also being in town lately, I'm on the Arts Commission, and I'm a visual artist by trade. And that's something that I see severely lacking in our town, is anything that supports the creation of visual arts. I've seen that we've spent a lot of time, and rightly so, developing museums for things of the past, which is great. But there's not a lot going on in town that's helping kids of today, or even residents of today, create for the future. And so something like an art creation space, or something that facilitates the creation of art and or music. I think we do a lot with sports in town, and we do some with dance and things like that. But you know, if we promote more of the arts in a variety of ways, I think that will also attract more interesting and more diverse types of populations as well as businesses. And ultimately, those things can be helped to, you know, use the spaces in the placemaking. I ended up almost by default doing the mural on the wall of the Public Works building. And that type of small gesture, I think, has created a lot of, I don't know, interest, and or I've gotten a lot of compliments for that space. So simple things like that, I think we could be doing relatively inexpensively around town to help, you know, promote Stratford as a fun, cool, interesting place to be. So I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a beautiful backdrop to that that part of the town, public works area, and that really improves everybody's vision as they go through that East Main Street area.
It was simple. You remember you drove by, it looked horrible, and then, you know, we got a nice paint job, and then we added some flowers, and everybody's happy. It's not
Jeff,
that
that's the
simple.
daffodils that I'm
Yeah.
thinking of. Oh,
Mhm.
that is great. It's really nice.
You know, a couple of those around town, just that could help, I think, in various ways as far as, you know, elevating the look and feel of the place. You know, it used to look derelict, now it looks like people care. Nobody's tagged that wall. Nobody seems to be bothering it. You know, it's actually a nice thing. If we could do that in a couple more places, that might, you know, instantly be able to turn things around. It's a, you know, I can see how it works. I see how it works in other towns. Like Norwalk is a great example right now. They're really embracing the arts, and it's helping them flourish. You know, I think it's something we're lacking.
Anybody else before we move on? Any
About
thoughts?
the village district designation that you talked about. I mean, so the historic district, we have a lot of those elements of, you know, if anybody wants to substantially change or do any work that might change the look or the material of their property, they need to go through the historic district commission. But outside of the border of the historic district, I don't think there's any review that the town does on the aesthetics. They do on obviously building, code and the like. So when you brought up the village district, how would you envision that working, or what's the thinking behind that?
I think, and Susmita, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was something that came up in the previous plan, and I think our question to you was if there's still a desire for that, is that something that should be considered, maybe recommended in this plan?
Yes, right now there is no plan, and we don't know how it may look like, or, you know, this is just a strategy that's in the current plan that was never implemented. But if you wanted us to include in the updated plan, we can include it as a strategy, and perhaps maybe as a next step, look at reviewing what the community preferences are in those areas, and possibly hiring a consultant to review the zoning standards and how they either encourage those kind of community preferences or discourage. I know Jay in our office has mentioned that we have some budget for updating our zoning regulations, and most communities right now are looking at form-based design standards, come zoning standards, a hybrid model. Maybe you know, we can do something like that for these commercial corridors or village district locations. I don't know. I mean, this is a very open-ended question for you as Historic District Commission and the Arts Commission, Architectural Review Board, whether you want this to be in the updated plan or not.
Smita, I definitely have read several other towns' TOD plans that have very distinctive design canons. I mean, they talk very specifically about appropriate architecture, and I don't think that would even be out of place within our TOD plan. Ours is very vague compared to ones that I've read from other towns, and I think that maybe sort of starting with the TOD as maybe even a pilot, just to narrow down the design standards or the visual standards for streetscaping could be really helpful. Because right now there isn't a lot of guidance other than it should look appropriate, but that's,
yeah,
you know.
That's pretty general. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to get to some of these questions. These next two are pretty similar. What needs does your board commission have that the town could or should respond to? And then, you know, what could the town do in the near term to support your board's or commission's mission? Any thoughts?
You know, I'd say if you'd asked me this a year ago, it'd be a little bit different. I think that from at least from my perspective, my other members can weigh in if they disagree, but we've actually made good progress in terms of the town, particularly the building department and the historic district collaborating much more closely in ensuring that the work is moving. I think historic district commission and the district itself is prioritized in the building process in our district. So I'm not sure if there's anything that we specifically need the town to do to fulfill the commission in terms of what town could do to some of the earlier points, maintenance of I don't know if it was which of the Megans sent the picture to me, but like there's broken glass in Academy Hill park, like right by the break and the fence where everybody walks in and out. It's a giant field of broken glass that's been there for about
Yeah, somebody broke into a car. There's a big, like, 5 foot by 5 foot square of broken windshield glass. I was going to email Rich Fredette. It looks like he left, or he's off. But I didn't know if there was anyone in Public Works I should email as well. And I had texted Ryan and Megan saying, do we know anyone in Public Works that we can send this picture to? Because sledding season is coming up and this is definitely not okay to be under the snow with kids.
I am still here. I've been monitoring every comment that everyone has made. I was going to summarize this at the end that if somebody does see something, please say something. I'm at my phone all the time. I'm taking in, 10 to 15 calls a day. So please don't hesitate. We will get to it and we will get those cleaned up.
I also wanted to add, this is the first time I'm meeting the members of Historic District Commission, although I've been working in the town for 4 years. I know Ryan because he was part of the Center School Committee. There are, I think, several thousands of properties in the State Register of Historic Properties with SHPO. They have a form for each property. And when I reached out to them, they said, if you can send somebody over to scan those documents and bring them to Town Hall, they would be happy to share those, but they can't just give us the copies to bring to the Town Hall. So right now, we don't have that list of state registered properties with us.
Okay. I can look into that.
Okay.
I can comment on, more specifically the question that was brought forth. So I'm part of the ARB and we're new. I mean, it's been, I don't know how long since it's been now, couple, 3 years. We wrote our own guidelines. So it was a difficult process of kind of getting, out there in the public. So we had to create our own guidelines, which we're in the process maybe of thinking about either adding to those, revising those, similar to what we've talked about here. But I think the difficult part, and we haven't honestly had a huge amount of development going on in those major corridors along Main Street or even Barnum Avenue. We've looked at a lot of industrial projects and things like that. And I know the ARB would all love to kind of sink our teeth into a really meaty, commercial development that really we thought would really impact the kind of those corridors that we've been talking about. And we really haven't had that opportunity because there's not projects that are being brought forth on those. And we did just have one, and I don't believe, I think this coming week it's going to go in front of the planning and zoning. And I would say that it was a fairly contentious meeting. Understand, the ARB has no real power. We're advisory board only, and I guess if I could, there's one thing I wish that and I understand the difficulties in this, but if the town could somehow miraculously give us that some power, I'm not sure how that happens because our field is so subjective, but all we can do is advise developers, and they're trying to do and stretch their dollars the most that they possibly can. And while we can write all the guidelines that we'd like and stress that we'd like it to be that way at the end of the day, and I think we're getting really nice support from the zoning commission, but again, we haven't had those meaty projects along Main Street. Like I said, this one is going to be coming up to them shortly. But again, you're up against, and I can see it, and it's my world outside of my work in the ARB, and it's a developer's mindset, and they're gonna do. They drive through the town, and they're gonna do what they view as the level commensurate with the rest of the town. And this goes back to my original comments about how the perception of the town as you drive through those main areas, and they're just, I honestly, and I love Stratford, like I said, been here my whole life, but it's, you drive through downtown Fairfield or any some other towns, and it has a different feel, and from an aesthetic standpoint, and a developer is going to sense that, and there's just a certain amount of money that they're going to want to spend in development in Stratford right now, because they only feel like they need to come up to a certain level, and beyond that, it doesn't make economic sense. So it's hard to enforce these commercial design guidelines that we have come up with when they're really it's time and money. That's the biggest, and it's the hardest. And like I said, we're getting nice support from the other. We put forth recommendations, and other boards can make that part of their approvals, but we really have no direct say in.
I think, James, you're touching on like that chicken or the egg thing, where it's really hard because you can go in a vicious cycle of like improvement versus non-improvement, and you have to have all the pieces in place to make it work, right? You need the schools, you need the downtown, you need the commutability, you need the resources, you need the money, you need the town wanting to spend money, you need the gathering places, you need all of those things to come together all at once, which I feel like we're starting to address here because we seem to all be coming back to the same argument. But I think that until the town basically decides that they have to hit this from every side, we can plan all we want, but it's really hard to attract all these different facets that make the whole picture. We can't just do one at a time because that one fails without all the other pieces supporting it. And that's kind of the situation that we keep all coming back to, I think.
So I'm gonna just, for the sake of time, excuse me, did you want to go?
No, you can go ahead, Rory.
Oh, I was gonna just ask, what plans does your board or commission have, over the next several years that could impact the town? Is there anything coming up that we should discuss in the plan or talk about?
This is Rich for that, chairman of the Arts Commission. We have several projects planned out. What we are really waiting on is permission from private owners of properties, such as up in the green, over on the side of Marshall's. Which once we obtain their permission, we plan on putting a mural on the back of Marshall's, and along with the similar logo that goes on the self-storage that you see coming into Stratford. At the bottom of exit 33 southbound, you will see "Welcome to Stratford" in very large letters. But these things, we have to obtain the permission and go through the legal guidelines with the owners of the property. And so we do have several projects. Hopefully we'll get them over the winter months and we'll be able to start these projects, along with, as everything else that we've been talking about this evening, it all takes money. So we are hoping to raise some money and get additional funds through grants. Our grant writer has just left us, so we have to depend on somebody in the mayor's office to help us with these things. But if we can obtain the money, the permission, the Arts Commission plans on a very busy spring.
Great. That's wonderful. Anybody else? Any plans moving forward?
Well, the Historic Commission is much more, it's more of a reactive commission than a proactive in terms of defending the character of the neighborhood, but it's more about responding to applications. And I don't think our charter really has much in the way of a proactive output.
I think if the town chooses as part of the this new plan of conservation and development to do things like the village district overlay kind of things, or someone suggested about different guidelines for TOD areas, I think that the ARB would certainly like to take a kind of a leading role in what that might look like. So I think that would be something we maybe could offer and we'd like to see happen over the next several years.
Great. All right, so I'll just end with this last question about vision. What's the vision for your board or commission or the services that you provide? In what ways could or should it change, over the next decade or so? Any thoughts on vision?
I'll talk until it gets too loud over here. in terms of a vision for the Historic District Commission, which I'm on, I think, and I don't want to say like our commission is so much different than everyone else's, but in a way, for some of our members, it is because they live in that area and they're invested in their home to protect the integrity of the district. And so for myself personally, I would love to see over the next 10 years is our commission be able to help cultivate a sense of pride in our history in town so that we want to save these homes, so that we want to protect what's being built by the TOD in our neighborhoods so that it looks similar to other buildings when you drive into the historic district. The other day I sent Ryan Ehrenhaus an article about a 1600s home in Norwalk that was bulldozed on the weekend. And they lost a huge piece of history in their town, because someone was careless and didn't think that it was worth what it was. And so I think that I would love to see the town continue to foster that. And I think that the mayor has been an advocate. I know that he was active in, but so personally, that's what like my vision for the Historic District Commission in partnership with the town would be.
And add to that, I'd love to see us provide more resources to the homeowners in the district, whether it's in terms of information, but also resources to continue to keep the district and the character of the district outside of just their homes, the streets. It was a couple of years ago, the beautification committee donated a number of daffodils along Elm Street. There are ways that the commission can be a force to help the residents improve the character for people to
Brian,
come in.
can I ask you, I assume the district has, a historic district guidelines handbook that you use. Yep, okay.
The PDF is on the town website.
Great, I'll take a look.
Thank you.
Rory, do you want to show quickly what Tom shared with us? I thought, I don't know if the POCD can go into that level of detail, but at least I'll give them an idea about what Tom was envisioning for the character areas.
Yeah, Susmita, did he develop this? I was trying to figure out who had made this.
I think he did on his own. He was saying he was working on it, and he came up with something, but he's open to discussion and further refinement of this.
And we can share this out to everybody on this call. This is for the Paradise Green area, and it talks about the development pattern, kind of mostly residential, there's some commercial, kind of right along that main street there. But then it gets into, it talks about massing, placement of buildings, facades, appropriate styles. And this really reminded me of like a historic district handbook, actually, talking about different building styles, materials, and colors are mentioned here. It really goes into quite a bit, about, here, dumpster deliveries, talking about shielding some of the views of those uses, talks about paving, street furniture. It really gets into quite a bit. Lighting, there's some different examples of lighting styles and signage. Really interesting. Talked about public artwork, included, that daffodil mural there that you guys have here in town. Talked a lot about, public artwork, and it seems like a common theme here. Everybody's really supportive of that. And then, landscaping, street trees, and I love this. It even listed out recommended plantings. And so really kind of an interesting, I thought, useful document. Excuse me, I don't know.
Wait, can you go back to the plantings, please? Can you go up one page, please?
Sure.
Every single tree there is invasive except for cornice, which is no longer considered appropriate for a street tree because it's really inappropriate. If you can connect him with me, I'd be happy to help him make a list of more appropriate street trees that are also native.
I think this is a great start, and the POCD will just have a recommendation to develop some kind of guidelines for character areas. But if, as an ARB member, he has put in significant time on this, and maybe the ARB can, moving forward, refine this further if they want to adopt these guidelines in or if they want the town to adopt these guidelines, and maybe they can work with the Historic District Commission and the Arts Commission to make some changes to this document. But I really, I admire his commitment to this document and his efforts in this. This is a great start. I mean, this is something, I know your concerns about center school site, and I've been hearing, I don't want to argue about yes or no for that development, but all I want to say is design makes a huge difference too. And if you were to, like you said, if TOD has more specific design standards and that are going to, satisfy the look of the area, maybe the density of the development would not look as threatening to the audience living there, and it probably would improve the overall values of the place. Design actually helps improve housing values too. So there is something for all three commissions to think about here. I never really expected Tom would work on a document like this, to be honest, but this is great start, I think.
So what was the genesis of this?
So I said we were actually meeting today to discuss placemaking, and he has been working on this since we announced the meeting, and he put together something that he thought would look good for his neighborhood, Paradise Green, where he lives.
Gotcha.
So Smitha, can we find that online?
No, this is a draft, Steve, but like Rory said, we would email everyone on this call.
Yeah.
And then you can discuss you can keep it as an agenda item on your commissions and discuss this further and come to an agreement on this document. And then maybe moving forward, you can develop such standards for other areas in the town too. But I don't know how this gets implemented and who adopts this. So I'm curious to know what the next steps would be too.
Well, I'm curious, and because I'd be happy to put an agenda item for the Historic District Commission members to discuss creating a document like this for the historic district.
That'll be lovely.
But I would need, but the question is, does the town have resources to hire somebody to? I can't make that.
I think I don't know. I mean, our department, we're just working on POCD right now, and we have money for zoning update. Maybe, whoever is a zoning consultant, we can give him or her that document to incorporate in the zone standards. Or maybe, you can talk to the mayor directly and see if there's any alternative for this.
Okay. Yeah. I'd love to take this and show it to her and say, imagine if we had something like this for the historic district. And then also in terms of the conversation around the village district idea of what's surrounding the historic district, as well, as we start to, if we could make that a little bit more.
Yeah, and a village district is not set in stone. If you don't want to call it a village district and just take it off of the POCD update and just say, we just want to improve our commercial corridors with more trees or more streetscape, that's an alternative too.
Or you said the standards for the POC district. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I think we're just about out of time. With that, I just wanted to really, thank everybody for taking the time to meet with us. And if anybody hasn't visited the project website, planstratford.com, I encourage you all to go on that. We're always updating it. There's the online survey. There's an interactive map where you can actually put pins on a map. It's a Google map. You can zoom right in and make specific comments. I think for this topic, that would be really helpful to have you folks go in and do that. And we'll review those and incorporate comments into the plan. As we mentioned, we'll share this document out, provide, I think, as long as Tom's okay with that, Susmita, it sounds like he was. So we'll be happy to share that.
I think he was willing to share with everyone.
Okay, great. And yeah, so again, thank you all. I don't know, Susmita, if you had anything else to add.
I think one meeting was too short for this discussion. And if you can put it as a discussion item on your commissions and discuss further and get us some draft recommendations to inform the POCD, please do. I think, Rory, your timeline is January, right? When you start writing the plan. So anytime by January is fine. take a look at what's in the current POCD and see how, whether you agree with it or whether you want something to be changed or added, and just let us know.
So, something else to add in, and I'm not sure if it falls within this plan, but seeing how everything is online and we're creating brochures online and pamphlets online, a better social media marketing presence for the town. That's my little input.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night. It's supposed to be warmer tomorrow, so it'll be back in the 70s. So,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank